Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the CUGC XL Central event that we have today. We have got a great day planned. We're glad that you could be here. So I'd like to first introduce myself. My name is Steve Elgin. I'm an Omaha CUGC leader since 2015. And myself and Tom Nguyen are your MCs today. Tom is a Dallas CUGC leader, and you're going to meet him in the next session. And both of us will be your MCs today. So I've been serving as a CUGC leader, as I said, since 2015, and I also currently serve as the steering committee president, and I've been a CTA for a few years as well. So a great deal of hard work from our various leaders and CUGC staff and our sponsors has gone into making today possible. So we just want to take a moment to acknowledge them. These are your leaders that are with us today that help make this event possible. So thank you to our leaders, because we know it's a volunteer position. Sometimes it's thankless and it can be a lot of work. Here's our agenda that we have today. You're going to find the full lineup in the CUGC lobby as well as on each session webcast. So that is what we're working on today. We're also going to have some roundtable topics. At 2:30, we will have roundtable discussion, and you can get to the roundtables by clicking on your topic of choice in the CUGC lobby or by using your roundtable widget on the Widget Toolbar. Our different topics are Endpoint to Remoting Protocol, moderated by Rody Kossen, Citrix on Azure, moderated by Kevin Nardone, PowerShell, moderated by Guy Leach, and Open Discussion, moderated by Scott Benuski and Ryan Snittiger. I apologize if I slaughtered a name there. Platform navigation. Most of you have probably been to one of these XLs by now, but just in case you haven't, we'll go over some details here. So the best way to navigate through the On24 platform is to keep the CUGC lobby open at all times. Click and open each session or roundtable at their dedicated times. Sponsor booths are open from 11:30 to 3:30. To close a session, simply close out the tab. If you navigate away from the lobby, you can find a link back to the agenda and or resource area on each session. There's a widget toolbar at the bottom of each speaker session and sponsor booth. The main widgets I want to bring to your attention are in the group chat, the Q&A, and help. The group chat should be used to communicate with other audience members and presenters. Go ahead and open your chat now so you don't miss any of the conversation. Send us a hello to let us know you're here. If you have any questions for the presenters, please drop them in the Q&A box. This will make it easier for our speakers to filter and respond to your questions. The help button will take you to the On24 event help guide. If you're having issues with the platform, this will be the place to go. You can also visit the FAQ page linked on the CUGC lobby for more help with the platform. We'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, ControlUp, EG Innovations, Goliath, iGel, Liquidware, Nutanix, and Stratadesk. Be sure to visit their booth throughout the day. Interact with the staff using the chat widget and by asking questions in the Q&A box. Check out their resources and enter for prizes. Each sponsor booth will have a question on their console. Ask the sponsors the questions in their Q&A box. They will respond with the answer. Once you have gathered all of the answers, fill out the passport form on the CUGC lobby. Be sure to submit it by 3:15 p.m. Central Time to be entered to win one of 7 $100 Amazon gift cards. Winners announced during the prizes and closing session. Another way to win prizes is to tweet. Do you follow @MyCUGC on Twitter? If not, follow us @MyCUGC by 3 p.m. Central Time today for a chance to win a CUGC cooler and a CUGC tumbler. If you are already follow us, you can enter by tweeting a screenshot from today's event by 3 p.m. Central Time using the hashtag MyCUGC. In addition to the Passport Prize and Twitter prizes, 4 opt-in prize winners will be chosen and have their choice of Apple AirPods, a Flex Cycle under-desk bike, and a Star Wars Lego set. As you can see, there are many prizes offered throughout the day and many ways to win, so join us at the prize session at 3:50 p.m. Central Time to see if you're a winner. Also, all attendees will receive a free CUGC t-shirt. The code to claim your shirt will be given out during the prize session on Zoom after the comedy session. After our terrific technical sessions, and add some laughter to your day with a comedian, Andy Hendrickson, at 3:10 p.m. Central Time. To join in on the fun, you will click on Andy's comedy session on the event lobby. Okay, now to get things rolling, we're going to ask a couple of trivia questions. First one to answer correctly in the chat will receive a CUGC cooler. To answer, use the chat box, not the Q&A box, please. You will find the chat widget below. Go ahead and open it now so you're ready. Here we go. What is the oldest major soft drink brand in the United States? All right, and the answer is Dr. Pepper. Next question. What city and state did Dr. Pepper originate in? The answer is Waco, Texas. Okay. Now we will have our first sponsor, which is Liquidware. I believe Adam Rue is our presenter for this. And we are actually running a couple minutes ahead of time. So Adam, you are up, sir.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? All right, let me get my screen sharing here. And bring up some presentation. All right, so Liquidware and Citrix is what my marketing team really likes to call a better together story. Again, my name's Adam Rue. I am a solutions architect for Liquidware, and I just want to take a few minutes to talk about how these two solutions can help your organization be cloud ready. So today, Liquidware actually offers 3 strategic products for Windows desktops. They're Profile Unity, which is a user environment management solution, FlexApp for advanced application layering, and Stratosphere UX for visibility across desktop environments. With Citrix virtual apps and desktops, you have the ability to meet the ever-changing needs of your workforce with ease. You choose a deployment that works best for your business. End users get the same secure, high-definition experience across operating systems and networks. Basically allows you to centralize your image management and scale as you need. When we discuss flexibility, one of the most important topics that comes to mind for anyone even considering the journey to the cloud is which cloud do I choose? So I wanted to take a moment to emphasize that although Citrix has long been recognized for the ability to deliver any application to any device of any network, They're now taking that one step further by enabling that app or desktop to live in any cloud, be it a public cloud offering like Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, Oracle Cloud, or GCP from Google, or even by leveraging a private cloud that could comprise of HCI appliances or any virtualization technology, including your Xen servers, your Hyper-Vs, your vSpheres, or your Nutanix AHV. Citrix is the only vendor to give you the ultimate cloud flexibility. So at that point, the question really becomes, how do I get my users to the cloud? And that's really where cloud staging comes into play. Cloud staging is a desktop management strategy that leverages centralized cloud-based storage as a staging area to transform your users' desktops. A cloud staging strategy can enable an organization to coexist desktops of different types or even lift and shift users to an entirely new desktop platform. Important user data, such as your applications and your user authored data and your user profiles, are all seamlessly synced and then hosted on cloud storage, while users remain productive and ready to shift or log into their new desktop as soon as required without really missing a beat. Using Liquidware Essentials, our complete workspace management suite, puts a check in all four of the cloud staging boxes, which are the first, we have application staging. Using FlexApp, we support object-based cloud storage from all three main clouds today. You can start by hosting your on-prem virtual or physical desktop apps, and as soon as the user logs into their desktop of the future, applications will follow them directly from the same cloud storage. The second checkbox is user profile staging, and using our Profile Unity product, we can harvest, virtualize, and decouple the user profile and make it portable across all Windows versions, all hypervisors, and all cloud platforms. FSLogic's profile containers can also be hydrated with a Profile Unity managed profile. Hydrating a plain FSLogic's profile container with user select legacy profile data can make that new workspace productive at the user's first logon. Third, we have user authored data staging, and that's where Profile Unity can also be set to silently harvest user authored data from your legacy machines. This keeps users productive while staging their data on your OneDrives or your Amazon Workdocs or even Dropbox for Business for that seamless access from a legacy machine to a new cloud-hosted desktop. And finally, we need to be able to monitor that user experience and progress, and that's where Stratosphere UX comes in. It monitors the user experience of any Windows desktop end user, and that data can be used to then assess or baseline the quality of the session against the new desktop. Meanwhile, Profile Unity can audit any of your user authored data, move to the cloud, and log the completion readiness of each user's account. Another thing I want to point out is we do have a Vhd Compacting Tool available now. It's free to download. Just go to liquidware.com, compress those VHD files, whether it's profile disks or applications or whatever you're using VHDs for. Works great. And we also have some FlexApp automation coming later this year. Stop by the booth and ask us about it. Appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Adam, very much. Okay. So our first technical speaker of the day is Rody Kossen. He's a CTP and will be speaking on how to enhance user experience from Endpoint Remoting Protocol. Please welcome Rody Kossen.
Thanks, Steve. I hope everybody can hear me. All right. So thanks for having me here. My name is Rody Kossen. I'm a lead consultant at Picor, a Dutch IT company. But most of my work, you'll see, is in the community. So I'm a Citrix CTP and Nutanix NTC, and also proud to be in NVIDIA NGCA, and I'm part of Team RG, which is a group of community friends doing cool stuff with remoting graphics. So for today, we're going to talk about user experience. So what to expect during this session? Well, first of all, we'll start with some basics around protocols and stuff. We'll go through the different encoders. Then we'll hop in how do you test with a encoder, how do you test scenarios to find the best user experience. Then we'll dig a bit into the different endpoints. We'll get into some real life scenarios, and then we close up with some lessons learned from today. All right. As I said, it's all about user experience today. Because everybody wants to have this great view of the ocean with some beautiful clouds and a sunset. So how do we get the best user experience out of our system? Let's dig into that. Let's first start with a few key takeaways. So as my session is about user experience, I really find that key. So invest time to enhance that. Because happy users with great user experience are more productive. They're not complaining all the time. So you have less calls on your help desk, but also people get work done. But to get the best user experience, you need some basic knowledge of the different protocols to make the right decisions for your scenarios. So testing your environment with your applications and, of course, your own endpoints and your network heuristics. But we'll dig into that later on. All right, some basics. There are so many things to tell about the basics of encoders. So first start with colors or color bit depth. So I think some people already seen these images. But in computer graphics, we have a certain amount of colors we can display. And it's described either as, for example, 8-bit. So that means that one color, like if you have RGB, like the red color can have 8 bits of information. But you can also see it in on your display with 24 bits. So you have 3 main colors, RGB, so 3 times 8 makes 24. But there's a problem with lower color bit depths, and you can see that on the right-hand picture. You can clearly see some gradients starting to happen in the clouds, especially around the sunset. So you can see that the orange getting bigger lines in it if you dig to the sea, and that's all due to compression. There's color information removed, not enough color information to get a smooth gradient, so you get hard lines. And on the left hand, we have an image with a higher color bit depth, where you can't see those lines and the image quality is much better. But upping the bit depth also means more information, so more bandwidth. Lowering the bit depth is one of the things done in compression. But there are different types of compression. So first of all, you have lossy compression, which means it's irreversible. So you can't go back to the original. And it's always used to reduce data size. And some examples for audio files, for example, are MP3, for still images, JPEG, and for moving images, H264, for example. So on the right side, you can see a example of a lossy compression. So on the left hand, you have a lossless image of the bird where you can see the details of the feathers. And on the right side, you can clearly see that the image quality is heavily reduced. You can't distinguish all the different feathers any longer, and you get some artifacts in it as well. So the image is less clear, but it's a lot smaller. But on the other end of lossy, we have lossless compression. And lossless means that it can be reversed. And that's a good thing. Otherwise, for example, zip files wouldn't do anything, right? If you zip it and you can't unzip it, why zip it? So Zip files are an example of lossless compression, but also PNG for still images, or maybe if you watch a movie, Dolby True HD, for example, is also a lossless compression. Citrix also invented another term. It's called visually lossless, which means it's irreversible, but the quality is so high, and so the difference can't be seen by the human eye. But they've removed some information to lower the bandwidth. And encoders or video encoders, video codecs are really magicians. So I did a size comparison between a screen capture and with a PNG, so lossless compression. And also I created a 5-second movie of a web page. So on the right side, you see a tech news website in the Netherlands called tweakers.net. So I created the PNG, and that PNG is almost 900 kilobytes in size. Quite decent, right? It was great quality. So I also took the 5-second screen capture with 30 frames per second. So if you calculate that into still images, it's on 150 frames. But it was only 400 kilobytes in size. So it's really magic what they are doing there, to remove all the not used information, all the duplicate information, to reduce the file size. But compression comes at a cost. And one of the most common ways to do compression is something called Chroma Sub Sampling, and it reduces the color information. And it's based on the idea that our eyes, our visual system, is less sensitive for color than luminance. So the color information is not so important, but the brightness, the luminance, is more important. And because the luminance is not changed, the picture clarity is maintained. And it can reduce the file size even up to 50%. So a few common descriptions of Chroma Sub Sampling you might have seen are 420 and 444. So 420 is used on mostly all videos. So if you watch a video on YouTube, on a Blu-ray, for example, it's all 420. And 444 means that there's no color subsampling or no color information lost. So if we look at that matrix, you can see that it takes all the luma in the top left corner, and it takes all the chroma, the Y and the V, so all the color information is maintained, so the final picture, final pixels are the same as the original. If we go to the down right bottom, you can see 420. Still, we take all the luma, so all the brightness information, but we reduce the amount of color information. And the final pixel is different. But because we have so many pixels on the screen, our eyes can't tell the difference, especially in moving images. And I said moving images because there's a downside to this. And that's especially visible when you have text with different colors. So on, I think it's hard to see, but if you Google YUV 444 versus 420 on Google, you get one of these images. So on one side, we have 420 compression, where you can see that the blue and the red start to tend to merge into each other. So it's quite hard to read. While on the other hand, we have 444, and the image quality stays perfect. This is also commonly seen with 2D CAD, like AutoCAD images, where you have sharp lines with bright colors on a darker background. So the color information is lost. The clarity of the colors is also lost due to the thin lines. So colors are merged into each other. So that's in some situations not a wanted scenario. So there's so much more to tell that I created a blog, and I still need to write a part 2 of it. But it will take me a while, I think, to write it. But you can find some more information on my blog about this. So let's dig into the different encoders. So Citrix has many different encoders, as you might know. So since Citrix CVAD 2003, this is the complete list of encoders. So we have ThinWire, which uses a combination of JPEG and PNG, and also some special encoding around text. So they can send text lossless over the wire without using too much bandwidth. They have also something called adaptive display, or you might have know as active changing regions, which also contains a feature built to lossless, which will come later in this presentation back as well. And they enhance it greatly in the 2003 release. So if you want to use built to lossless, please use 2003 or later. And Citrix also uses video codecs. So video codecs like H264 for the entire screen, where they encode it completely with a video codec with YUV 420, 444. But they also use a newer version of H264 called H265 for even further compression. And you still can do lossless compression if you want, so no compression at all. And if you have a GPU in your system, you can offload many stuff to your GPU. So your GPU contains a special encoder built to encode video codecs like H264, so that can be offloaded. So people often ask me, hey, why do I need a GPU with Citrix? So in my opinion, GPU enhances the user experience because you can offload applications to it. So applications like Teams or browsers like Firefox and Chrome rely heavily on the GPU. But even Office 365 these days, just open the Task Manager and see what your GPU does on your laptop if you just scroll through a Word document, for example. And as you have seen in the previous slides, you can offload many of the protocols to the GPU as well. So that's why I think, in my opinion, GPUs matter in the remoting scenario. So before we dig into different scenarios, let's see how to test. How do you build a decent test to find out the best user experience for end users? So you could use benchmark, right, like 3D Mark or Unigen to run benchmarks on your system to put them on the load, but that's not really a user load if you ask me. So you only test your system at maximum capacity. So it's better to use testing tools like LogGen, Login VSI, or Rex Analytics, which are repeatable and scalable. So you can scale from 1 user to 100 or even 1,000 users if you want to. And you can run tests which are doing real user stuff, like opening Outlook, browsing through their email, and that sort of things. And lastly, what you also can do with your end users is a Pepsi, Coca-Cola test, right? So don't tell the user what the different options are. So don't tell the differences, but give them 2 different desktops, name them A and B, and ask them what they think about it and what the differences are, which one they like better. So also use your end users in these tests. I'm also co-developer of a tool called RD Analyzer, which you can use to easily switch between different protocols. So here you see a screenshot on the right side of RD Analyzer, where you get live information, live view of your virtual machine with all the encoder settings and things like the CPU time used by the encoder, the amount of frames per second. And you can live switch between the different codecs and encoding options. So you can turn off hardware encoding or turn it back on the fly. So it costs €50 per year for a 1-person license, and we also have a company broad license if you want to use it for all your users. But it's a great simple tool to just enhance your encoders or to test different settings on the fly. All right, so I've done some. I've done pretty few tests on my home lab, which is a HP Z4 workstation. So all the tests you will see in the upcoming slides are done on this one. It contains an Intel i9, an NVIDIA graphics card, and it runs Nutanix HV Community Edition. And to get all the video streams, I use an Elgato frame grabber. So that's put between the HDMI output of my endpoint and my screen, so I don't interfere with the endpoint during those captures. So one of the things I've researched, and I researched this together with a friend, Patrick van der Born, who's also Citrix CTP. We researched many different clients, so rich clients like Windows 10, macOS, or Ubuntu Linux, but also many different thin clients like the IGL UD3, the new one with the AMD Ryzen. We tested with the Raspberry Pis and N-Computing Workspace Hub. So we did some testing in 2019. We did it last year, and we're currently working on a 2021 edition, but we're still early in the year to test newer versions of all the software as well. But still, when you test, don't forget to test with your applications, your network behavior like bandwidth, latency, packet loss, and your endpoints, because that really matters. All right, some endpoints. So we did some research in the native clients with Citrix CVAD, with Citrix HCX on the different endpoints, and there are some interesting results. So we see that almost or all endpoints can do thin wire for actively changing regions, H.264. But then we come to H.264 YOV 444. So without image or without color compression, like I told earlier, only Windows endpoints can do YOV 444 at the moment with Citrix. So if you want to have YOV 444 images, you need to use a Windows endpoint. On all the other endpoints, if you set the policy to YOV 444, it falls back to thin wire, always lossless. So your user experience will be poor. So keep in mind of that setting. Build to lossless, on the other hand, is supported on most platforms. And lossless is also supported on most platforms as well. We did find some issues with the new Raspberry Pi 4. In our first initial test last year, we couldn't get into a session where GPU was connected, and I see that my slide is a bit, my slides are messed up, but with the Raspberry Pi 4, I've seen some heavy screen distortions now as well. So there still needs to be work done from Raspberry Pi with the drivers as well, maybe it's Citrix with their client. But it's still a quite new client, so I hope that they will update it quite soon. So first video I want to show you is the comparison in performance. You can watch the YouTube video later on if you want, but I also created a video clip, and I think you would be able to see it now. Yes. So we have different endpoints here. So we have the Windows endpoint, macOS, and a Linux endpoint, and we all set the setting on all. We set the settings to YOV 444 to show you the difference between the Windows endpoint and all the other endpoints. Because in this scenario we have CAD workers who want to have great image quality and also want to maintain all all the color information as well. So you can see that the Windows endpoint runs best. So the fastest performance, it runs smooth, but on the other endpoints, it's more struggling. And that's because of the fallback to the thin wire. All right. So let's continue. I hope you can see my slides again. So this is the screen distortion I got on Raspberry Pi 4. where you can clearly see that when I update resolution, we see some cool stuff happening on the screen. So let's dig into some real-life scenarios. So the first scenario I have for you today is the CAD work. So a person working with either 2D applications like AutoCAD, MicroStation, DraftSight, or you name it, or 3D modeling applications like SolidWorks, Autodesk Inventor, Siemens NX. And those people need a high performance VM. So 2, 3, 4 vCPU, where the gigahertz is very important. So you need 3 gigahertz or higher. These applications are mostly still single threaded, so high clock speed really helps. And you need to add a GPU to it, right? So for these scenarios, you need a vGPU, for example, from NVIDIA, where you can use a T4 with a 2 gigabyte or 4 gigabyte frame buffer size, depending on your resolution of your screen. And if you use CFAT, I would recommend to enable NVEnc, and that's the encoding engine of NVIDIA. So use the hardware encoding with H264. And in this scenario, we set the quality to YOV 444. So again, you can find a video later on YouTube if you want to watch it later on as well. So I created a short version of it for just to show you the user experience in this situation, and I hope you can see it. Because I have some issues here to watch the video. But you will see that the user experience is great. So the user gets pixel perfect quality, great frames per second. So the user is happy. So for this scenario, I use the following settings. So set the video codec for compression for the entire screen to capture the whole screen with the graphics card, which also lowers the latency. So it will use a native Windows API to grab the screen, the screen directly from the frame buffer, encode it, and send it over the wire. Set the image quality to always lossless. Enable the hardware encoding because I have a GPU in my system. And if you want to do always lossless with a GPU, you need to enable allow visually lossless. So that's the Citrix invented option I talked about earlier. But as I mentioned before, this only works on Windows endpoints. But hey, the user has a Windows endpoint and they're very happy because they have pixel perfect quality with good frame rate. But then COVID came around, right? So the second scenario is the same CAD worker working from home. So we have the same application set with the same VM, but the difference now is that the user is working from a shitty home connection, and it's only 4 megabit. So maybe they use ADSL or something else. So what happens if I only have a 4 megabit connection and I use the same settings? So again, the YouTube link for watching it further on. So no, it's not the On24 platform. This is really what the user sees. So they have shitty frames per second, sorry to say. It's just 3-4 frames per second. So it's almost like skipping through your PowerPoint, right? This is unworkable for the end user. So they are really sad. They are not happy. They can't work from home. And they will complain. So in this scenario, how do you optimize the user experience? Well, there's an option called Build to Lossless. And I will show you the same video again with a 4 megabit connection. But here you will have on the left-hand side, you will see the YUV 444 scenario, and on the other hand, you will see the Build to Lossless scenario. And you can pick one. You can choose whichever you want, but I would pick the right one. It's day and night difference. So the amount of frames per second sent to the user is so much more on the right hand than on the left side. So the optimal setting in this situation is to still use for the entire screen, but set the image quality to Build to Lossless. This means that it will use H264 for a compression for a moving image, and it can still use YUV 444 if you want, but it will use a video codec H264 for the moving image. But once the image is still, so the user stops rotating the model or working on the model, it will build up a lossless image with a PNG image. So it's completely lossless. You will see it. So you can see it build up, especially if you have lower bandwidth, but you will have a much better user experience than full lossless. So still enable the hardware encoding to offload it to your GPU. If you want to have YUV 444 on Windows, you need to enable allow visually lossless as well. And I would recommend to also to enable optimize for 3D workloads here as well. So in this situation where you have the allow visually lossless enabled, you will get 444 build to lossless on Windows. But it's also different than the previous scenario, because now if you log in from a other platform like macOS or Linux, you will get YUV 420 build to lossless instead of the full lossless thin wire shitty performance like with the always lossless scenario. So this is a much better solution if you have different platforms. And in a situation where you have low bandwidth, you should enable EDT. And if you enable EDT, also enable the MTU size detection, so you don't run into performance issues if your MTU size is wrong. So the last scenario I want to share with you is the office worker. So the office worker uses applications like Microsoft Office, YouTube for instruction videos, and so on. So you can do either VDI with a small VM with 2 vCPU, for example, and 6 GB of RAM. And if you add a GPU, you will add the 1 GB virtual PC profile or the 2 GB profile. Or you can do server-based computing with Citrix virtual apps. And if you add a vGPU to that, you can either add a T48A profile where you can run maximum of 16 users per VM, or a 16 GB profile where you can go up to 30 per VM. Because the frame buffer really matters. And it's something you really need to look into. So I've done some tests with the frame buffer and the amount of users. So you can see the red line here. It's building up the amount of logged in users. So it's first start with 15, then go to 20, 25, and 30. And the blue line is the frame buffer. And I marked the part where you don't want to be with your frame buffer use. It's orange. So you don't want to be above 85% all the time. So you can clearly see if you go up to between 20 and 25 users, you're already at your max. So you want to be safe and sit a bit lower between 15 and 20, depending on your situation. And if you look at the right side with the T416A, we also build up to 30 users. And in the end of the test, we sometimes peak to the 85%, but it drops when the applications are closed directly. So you don't want to be in that scenario. So you don't want to be in this part, which I now marked. You don't want to be in that 85% or above continuously. So to come back to a GPU, do I really need it if I have moving images? So I created a video with a comparison between a CPU and a GPU scenario, where we run a YouTube 4K video displayed on Full HD. But on one side, we have a 2 vCPU scenario, and on the other side, we have a GPU scenario. So I hope you can see the video. Both give a very decent user experience, right? So both have a smooth frame rate. But if you look at the metrics below, you can see that the 2 vCPU scenario really hits the 100% CPU usage constantly. So that's something you don't want to have on your platform. And if you compare that with the GPU scenario, with a GPU you only use roughly around 30 or 35% of CPU. So that's a massive difference there. So what about the encoder? Does the encoder matter with a moving image? So what if we compare thin wire against H.264, which is a video codec? So in this video, I use the 3D Death Star as a reference model just to show you a moving image, because it's more repeatable than YouTube with all its commercials at the start. But here you can see on the left side thin wire, and on the right side H.264, where you see that thin wire struggles to get the frames over the wire or to encode it quickly enough. With H.264, it just works great. You have great user experience there. But as I said, H.264 and encoding comes at a cost. So if we look at Microsoft Office workloads and we compare thin wire against H.264 YUV 420, the image quality on the left is so much better. On the right hand, you can see some blurriness around the letters, sometimes even artifacts of the encoding process. So you really need thin wire with its lossless text capability if you have Office users. So we need to make choices. So we're in a split situation where we need to choose between left or right. So do we choose something for image quality for still images, so for Office workloads, or do we want to have great user experience with videos? Well, luckily we don't have to choose, because Citrix invented something called for actively changing regions. And for active changing regions, it scans your display and it will recognize what's on it. So in this example here, the green outlined part is the video, which will be encoded with H.264, which can also be done on your GPU if you have one. You will also see the red boxes, which are images, so they are sent over the wire with BMP or JPEG and can even be cached on the endpoint. And the blue boundary boxes mean that it's text. So for text, it will use a lossless encoder specially designed for this. So here we have a great combination between the user experience for Office workloads and moving images. So if you ask me, the optimal settings here are use video codec for compression set to for actively changing regions, set the image quality to high. It just ups the user experience, and the amount of extra processing power it costs it's okay. You wouldn't notice it, and the bandwidth will also it will also adapt to the bandwidth you have. So I would still recommend it to set it to high. And if you have a GPU, don't forget to enable the hardware encoding. It's enabled by default, but I always like to enable it myself so I know what I've enabled. And if Citrix changes it in the next release, it's still enabled. And the good thing here is it's supported on all endpoints. So Some lessons learned before we end this presentation. So we have seen that you need to optimize the encoder settings for your different workloads. So CAD, Office workloads, or whatever workload you have, you need to check what the best settings are. And the network conditions have a high impact on the user experience. I haven't shown any packet loss here, but you have seen if you have a lower bandwidth that some encoders don't make sense, and the user experience can be really bad. And the funny thing is that endpoints do matter. So if you take the wrong encoder on so if you do YUV444 in Linux, for example, with always lossless, you have a shitty user experience. And endpoints do also matter if you want to use advanced features like Teams redirection or browser content redirection, Teams offloading or browser content redirection. It makes sense to look at the endpoint, and there are so many combinations to test. So one of my goals for this year is also to take Teams into the test as well. But please take a look at your endpoint before you start using one of these features. And try to keep up with the release cadence of Citrix. Try to keep up with the current release instead of the long-term service release, because there are so many new things added over the last year. So, for example, EDT or lossy EDT, if you have a packet loss on your line, the built-to lossless enhancements for better image quality, and various other optimizations to the H6 protocol. So you should try to find the right setting for your environment, but make mistakes and learn from them. So I have 2 children. They're still both small, but they make mistakes every day and they learn from it. Why don't we do it in our work? So last 3 key takeaways again. So in my opinion, user experience is key. So invest time to enhance it. Get some basic knowledge of the protocols to make the right decision. Play around with them and see what works best for you. But you can use my test as a reference, but test in your environment with your applications, your endpoints, and your network heuristics. So don't take somebody else's results as the best solution for your environment. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and we're at the end.
Okay, thank you, Rody. I did see a couple of questions there, so maybe you could take a look at those, and if you haven't already answered them.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Okay, so next we're going to have our next sponsor introduction from Nutanix. I believe we're going to show a video from Nutanix.
Welcome to today's session, Nutanix Technical Introductions in 5 minutes or less. My name is Kees Bogeman, and I'm a Technical Director for End-User Computing within Nutanix. I've got a blog, a Twitter feed, and an email stream. If you want to hit me up with questions later on, then feel free to do so. Now, if you look at Nutanix as a company, you'd see that we have one platform for any app and any cloud, where there's a strong focus on long-term sustainable growth with multiple products, both on the platform, on the application, and cloud agnostic side. We've defined the 4 Ds within our portfolios. So we started off with digital hyperconverged infrastructure services. That's our bread and butter. That's where our virtualization, our storage, management and operation and security is hosted. Then we've designed the data center services business unit that holds the storage components of objects and other storage related services, networking and business continuity and disaster recovery. Then there's DevOps services that will offer cloud-native applications, automation with Calm, our automation and orchestration lifecycle management, and there's database as a service as well. And last but not least, there's a business unit called Desktop Services, and that will cover end-user computing, DAS, and digital workspace. all of that, we do that across both private cloud and public cloud, and that's where I wanted to talk to you about today. So if we look at the case for hybrid cloud deployments, we actually saw that based on IDC and Enterprise Cloud Index, that 85% of the enterprises continue to rank that hybrid cloud model as the ideal operating model. 73% of the respondents were migrating applications away from public cloud back to an on-premises infrastructure. And 60% of the respondents said that security was the biggest factor impacting enterprises' future for cloud strategies. And if you combine all of that, obviously Nutanix always had a stronghold in the on-prem data center solutions with our HCI core foundation. But looking forward, it would make sense to kind of offer something that enables you to build a bridge to hybrid cloud. And that's basically what we're doing. So if we specify this for end user computing and we're looking to that one workload a little bit closer, you would see that our hyperconverged infrastructure is a perfect match for desktop services, being server VDAs or desktop VDAs, doesn't really matter. Private cloud and public cloud operated by the same management plane, same look and feel, and the same tool set that you would use on-prem and in public cloud, simplifying your deployment, simplifying your golden image management, which has always been a tough situation to be in. If you leverage on-premises solutions and you burst into public cloud, then you have to do image management for each and every public cloud, spread it across regions. It kind of inherent complexity when you look at it. And we as Nutanix can simplify that. Now, how are we simplifying this? Looking at the integration points that we have, we've got a plugin for MCS. So if you look at the hypervisors that we support, it's vSphere, ESX, it's Microsoft Hyper-V, and there's Nutanix AHV. And Nutanix AHV is our own built-in hypervisor. And together with Citrix, we developed a joint solution to deliver the provisioning methodologies from Citrix onto Nutanix AHV. And for that, we created an MCS plugin. We've created the PVS plugin, so you can utilize both MCS and PVS on our platform. And there's a CVAT service plugin via Prism. And last but not least, there's a plugin for Director as well, which enables you to kind of get the details of your AHV underlying platform and get the performance details that you need. So all in all, if we look at how we differentiate for end-user computing, it's the platform of your choice. So pick your own broker, version, hypervisor, and platform. Doesn't matter which hardware vendor you're preferring. We have a OEM model that helps you define and pick the right platform for you. There's a per user pricing model to match infrastructure costs to the EUC licensing models that we see in the field. Linear scalability, and this is something that I think is very valuable. So we can scale from hundreds to 10,000 VMs with linear performance, and we have that documented in our reference architectures. We've got videos on YouTube, so please have a look and see for yourself. And last but not least, we have a complete end-user computing solution. So people always look at end-user computing as a fully assembled stack, and that's what Nutanix is doing with integrated file shares, security with our network segmentation called Flow, and now clusters as well. So building that hybrid bridge is something that we're dedicated to. And with that, I'd like to thank you. If you're interested in our technology stack or just want to hear more, we've got a virtual booth with the Nutanix team waiting for you. Thank you.
Okay. So we are running a little bit ahead of schedule here. So what we would encourage you guys to do is to go and visit the sponsor booths for a few minutes. I believe Guy is slated for 12:40 Central Time to start his presentation. It's currently 12:30 according to official T-Mobile time here where I'm at. So take the 10 minutes that we have and go visit the sponsor booths. And if any of you have additional questions for Rody regarding his presentation, don't forget to hit him up during his roundtable discussion with Scott Osborne a little bit later today. Oh, I see a correction here. It's 12:35 is going to be Guy Leach's session, so we have 5 minutes. So you'll head to the CUGC lobby to reach Guy's session, but in the meantime, take those 5 minutes and go visit our sponsor booths.